Hi guys, Andrea here. For those of you who may not have had a yoga class with me, today we're going to be running through 4 core stability exercises, and these are all really strong flowing poses that you can incorporate into your yoga practice or building some strength and stability for getting back on the climbing wall or just improving your climbing, and also great just to build some strength for everyday life. So we're going to run through each exercise and some modifications, and we'll get started. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is a modified sunbird, and this is one of my favorite exercises. We come over starting from our tabletop, and this one is great because you're not going to be hurting your back. There's not a lot of room that you can be arching your back, but you still have to be conscious of really engaging your core. So we want to find our version of table, and that can be shoulders over wrists, or I tend to like my wrists slightly in front of shoulders. Fingers are spread wide, gripping the mat, pushing the floor away so shoulders are really strong. Shoulders are protracted, kind of coming out of the back. And then we want to think about the core muscles wrapping around inside, or wrapping around the front of the body. And the goal of all of these exercises is to find stability. So we want to be moving only where we want to move. So to begin, we're going to find our version of sunbird. So extending one leg back, pushing foot into the wall behind you, and staying here. And then when you're ready, extending your opposite arm. And a modified version is just to keep the leg extended and arm on the mat. Then from here, we're going to shift around to the side without moving the torso, squeezing the leg, the arm, and then coming all the way back to center and placing back on the mat. And noticing when you place down, if you really shift into one side or the other, then we want to really focus on holding everything in so that you're basically moving your arm and leg without shifting anything else. So opposite side, pushing floor away, extending leg back, reaching your arm forward, and then we move around to the side, squeezing the obliques, squeezing the glutes. So there's a lot of work going in activation through here. And then we come back around and down. So I'll just do one more each side. Extending back, an arm coming forward, shifting everything around so that we're finding right angle to the body, squeezing everything into center, coming back around and down. Reaching forward and finding as much length in the spine, coming all the way to the side, crunching in and back, and then coming back to center. So I think to start out with this exercise, it's really great doing about 5 reps on each side. And I usually try and do 2 rounds of that. And then as you get more stable and more strong, you can add reps. But when I first learned this, I got told by someone, if it's easy, it means you're probably doing it wrong, because it is really easy just to throw our arm and our leg out. And so to think about having everything being wrapped around and so stable that you don't feel any movement in your trunk or your torso when you're extending your arm and leg, that's what we're aiming for here. Then we're going to move into the next exercise, which is going to be a bit more with planking. Okay, so the next kind of flow exercise we're going to do is a modified plank, kind of like a flying plank or one-armed plank. And this is one I'm actually still working on, and it's a really good challenge for finding that stability as we were finding with the first exercise and with just kind of balancing on one arm. So there's a few different levels that we can do this exercise at. And it's good to start working up from the ground. So I like to come into Sphinx pose, which is shoulders over elbows, so arms at about a 90-degree angle, arms about shoulder width distance apart. And one of the key things here, and with all of these exercises, is being really strong. So we talked about pushing the floor away when we were in our table, and the same is true here. We want to ground the forearms and the hands into the mat as we roll up. So we're going to ground into the mat, slowly begin to roll up to a plank on our knees. And this should be really strong here, just taking a few breaths, thinking about bringing the top of the pelvis and the low ribs together. Might feel like a little bit of a crunch, but it can help remove any arch in the low back. So keeping that extended, and then pushing into the floor, we're gonna just bring our forearm off the mat and fly it back behind us. And coming back, and doing the opposite side. So flying forearm back, and down. So notice I still shift a little bit. The goal is to be as stable as possible so we still feel those core muscles wrapping around. We still feel our body squeezing to center line, legs, arms, as we bring arm back and center, and back, and down, and slowly rolling back down. So this is those are the first two levels. The first level of this would be just rolling up into your plank on your knees and holding it. Second level would be flying the arms back. And then third level is coming up onto your toes, still a forearm plank, and then doing the arm flying back from here. So still want to connect the low ribs, top of the pelvis. I find still sometimes here I need to spread my feet a little bit wider for a base, but ideally you'll have feet close together. And then we push away. You find that the more you push away, the easier it is to find the stability. And then sending the arm back behind, and coming forward, and opposite side. And then slowly coming to your knees, and rolling down. So as you can see, I do still shift a little bit back and forth, but we want to be working that we're holding everything so strongly that we don't shift side to side at all. And so this is a great exercise just to work on the knees because it's just as strong even when you have the knees on the mat, and you can really work on finding that slow movement. Because the key with a lot of these stability exercises is it's easy to move quickly, but a lot of the strength comes from moving deliberately and slowly. And so we'll see that in the next modified plank that we do. So the next stability exercise we're going to do is another modified plank, this one on our hands. Kind of call it a flying side plank with a leg extension. If anybody has a better name for it, put it in the comments. So this, we're going to be on our wrists. So if your wrists are a little bit sore, just make sure you do, or they tend to get sore, just do a little bit of wrist warm-up and mobility kind of before get started, and always can take a break. And I'll try and share like a modification on your forearms. So this one is similar to the previous exercise in that we're going to be flowing through a couple of different postures, so to speak, and you want to move as slowly and deliberately as possible because it's easy to let the momentum take over, but the strength building comes from moving slowly and directing your body, which is what we want to do when we're moving into a more challenging yoga pose or when we're in a weird place on the wall and want to be able to like go for that clip or reach for the next hold. So we're going to come over into a full plank and want to have the hands as wide as possible like we did when we were in our tabletop, coming up onto the toes, pushing heels into the wall behind, still connecting the upper pelvis and the low ribs, so finding that little bit of crunch, finding really strong. And again, the more you push away, the more you squeeze everything to center, the easier the balancing is. So this is a few parts, and we'll kind of do the full thing first and then break it down. So we bring arm to opposite shoulder, opposite knee comes in, twisting into side plank, extending the leg, coming down for a hip dip, and then slowly making your way back around, planting the foot, the hand. Again, finding same movement on the opposite side, twisting, hip dip, and then slowly coming back. So this is, again, it's really easy to see how you could kind of just do one of these, and that's not really building the strength that we would like to build. So want to try and move each go through each movement deliberately. So the nice thing about this exercise is you can break it down into parts. If you're feeling, God, maybe don't feel strong enough to do all of that yet, it's great just to begin by working on the shoulder taps. And sometimes you notice if you're swaying side to side, you can walk the feet a little bit further out, and then as you get more comfortable, bringing them more in towards hip distance. And just trying to do that slowly and deliberately. And you're really pushing the floor away, makes it easier to have that time. And then the next step would be, once you've got this, bringing the knee in, and then coming back. And then when you're ready, bringing the knee in, tilting to the side. And so you can do each part of the pose as a modified version. So maybe you stay here and you just extend the leg. And then when you're ready, coming down for the hip dip. So you can continue to break this down. You can also start on the knees. So it's a little bit easier, a little bit more challenging to do the full flow on the knees. This is a great place to find your shoulder taps. You can still feel the core muscles wrapping around. It's also a great place to shift from here onto your side plank. So you can kind of do several different modifications to build up strength to doing the full flow. But really the key thing here is just moving as slowly and deliberately as possible, because that is what's going to build the strength and control that and stability that we're trying to create. So we have one more exercise, and this one is going to activate the shoulders even more and bring our quads into it a little bit, because we've been ignoring them so far. Okay, guys, so our last exercise is another modified plank, this one with a bit of floating knees. So if you've been doing a lot of planks and the wrists are sore, just making sure that putting a lot of weight into these first 3 fingers, it's really easy when we're on the floor to kind of have the weight go into the outside of our hands, and that can contribute to a little bit of wrist soreness and pain kind of coming up the side. So when we're in the plank, if you're feeling a bit sore, just thinking about having weight in these first 3 fingers. And this one is going to be a bit more bringing the shoulders and some flow and strength building for the shoulders. So we're gonna come into a plank and then just like walk this foot in a little bit more. Extending one leg. Actually, I might do it this way so you can see a little bit easier. And the goal is to flow down between a forearm plank and a full plank. So we're going to come down into our forearms, extending leg back, and then coming back up, bringing knee in. So then shifting back down onto your forearms, extending your leg, coming forward, bringing knee in. And sending back down, trying the opposite side. Bring it in a little bit, shifting down onto forearms, and coming forward. Shifting down and coming forward. And you can kind of adjust, like if you like it a little bit further out, you can kind of do that as well. So just adjusting how it feels good in your body. This way you can lower the knee all the way to the mat while you extend. And then the other version, if this feels like a lot to add in the hovering, is just working on shifting from the forearms back up. So finding your plank pose, pushing those heels back, connecting the low ribs and top of pelvis, slowly shifting down, bringing hips high, and then coming forward. So that's if you just want to build strength with the forearms first, before doing the full combination. And coming back up. As this flows for today, and I think when you're starting out with these, it's really good to maybe try and do 5 on each side if you're doing 2 different sides, and try and do 2 sets of that just to start out. Stability exercises, I think, are a little bit different than doing reps of squats, in that it's more important to do less reps and be like extremely deliberate and really strong in what you're doing. than doing 50 reps of the sunbird variation. So I would start out with trying to do 5 on each side if you have a side, otherwise just trying to do 5 total and doing 2 sets of that, and then slowly working up to maybe the forearm plank backs. I've added 1 at a time if you feel like you can add a couple. And then just trying to work up towards maybe 10. And then I think you'd want to go no more than 10 reps in a set, but you could add multiple sets. And the key with all of these exercises is you want to be as deliberate and stable as possible. And so if that means that you're modifying it with one of the versions that I showed so that you can focus on building that stability, then that's really the best place to start. And if it means you're doing the full version, but you just want to move really slowly through it, like how long can it take you, that is kind of what you're looking for. And then that will build this stability and strength that you can use when you're back in your yoga practice or incorporating these into your yoga practice, or when you're on the climbing wall, just finding that slow and strong movement. And so hopefully these were a little bit fun and a little bit challenging, and we'll see you next time.